What's up everyone, Greg's Gauntlet here with 10 tips and tricks for Apple's HomePod. One of the biggest limitations with Apple's HomePod as a smart speaker is the ability to only set one timer. Google Home and Alexa both provide options to set multiple and name timers, but if you try to add another timer on HomePod, it will make you reset the current timer. There are actually two workarounds to this until Apple adds the ability to set multiple timers. One is asking Siri on the HomePod to set an alarm. You can set as many alarms on the HomePod as you want. If your iPhone is nearby or if you wear an Apple Watch, you can also get around this limitation by setting reminders using HomePod. Reminders can be named, which can be helpful for setting multiple timers for something like cooking. Hopefully Apple updates the HomePod to allow for multiple timers, but if you need a workaround, this seems to be the only way to get around the current one timer limit. Asking Siri to raise or lower the volume will only raise or lower it by 5%. This also applies to tapping the volume buttons on the top of the HomePod touch panel. A better way to speed up this process is to ask Siri for a specific volume. You can ask her to set the volume in percentages, so simply ask, "Hey Siri, set the volume to 70%, or "Hey Siri, lower the volume to 20%. This is much quicker at getting to louder or lower volumes than asking Siri to simply lower the volume of a song or to raise the volume. Speaking of Siri, using the phrase "Hey Siri" works exceptionally well on HomePod. It works better than saying "OK Google" or "Alexa" on my Amazon Echo or Google Home. There's no need to yell with the HomePod. Just say "Hey Siri" at normal talking volumes, even when you're blasting your music, and Siri will hear the trigger phrase. Hey Siri. It makes controlling Siri on the HomePod work exceptionally well, especially in loud environments. Siri always picks up my commands, where sometimes with the Amazon Echo or the Google Home, I have to yell or get really loud to get them to execute the command. Playing music with the HomePod through Apple Music is great, and using Siri to control volume and skip songs is also good, but sometimes we just want a remote control. You can do this on the HomePod with your iPhone or iPad. All you do is go to Control Center, 3D touch the music section. Here you will find all the music sources, including HomePod. From here you can manually set the volume, rewind or fast forward through a track, and you can even skip songs. If you own multiple HomePods, you can see what they are playing throughout the house. So what if you want to see what's playing up next from your music? You can do this by following a similar step as the last tip. Go into Control Center, press the music section, tap the name of the song. This will bring you to Apple Music, but it will show you what's playing on your HomePod. Tap the song at the bottom and scroll down. From here, you can see what song is up next, and tapping the song will bring you to it. You can also access this feature by just asking Siri, "Hey Siri, what's the next song?" and she will tell you what song will be playing next. Apple Music is great, but sometimes you want to use a different music service. True, HomePod can only access Apple Music and podcasts through voice, but remember, you can Airplay Anything. I use this all the time for when I'm finding tracks on YouTube, but you can use it for any music service like Spotify, Google Play, or Amazon Music. It works exceptionally well, and even though I have access to Siri voice control on the HomePod through Apple Music, sometimes I actually just prefer to go through my list of songs in Apple Music and pick the ones I want and Airplay them straight to the HomePod. HomePod might just be the ultimate podcast listening tool. It is so easy to tune into any podcast, and the sound is excellent, especially for voices. However, did you know that you can actually control playback speed of the podcast like you can on your iPhone? You can ask, "Hey Siri, slow down the podcast." This will slow down your podcast.
Viruses, even airborne.
Hey Siri, slow down the podcast.
I'm talking about pollutants 1,000.
Okay, I'll slow it down.
Smaller.
You can also speed up the podcast by saying, "Hey Siri, play it twice as fast," or "Hey Siri, play it 1.5 times as fast." You can also jump to specific times by saying, "Hey Siri, jump 3 minutes ahead." If you're a heavy podcast listener, this gives you some nice controls that you are familiar with from the Apple Podcast app. Okay, so HomePod really doesn't have an interface for changing settings on the device. This might be confusing at first to find out where you can find a list of settings. You'll actually need to go to the Home app on your iPhone or iPad, and from there you can long press the HomePod icon. On the bottom right, you will see the word Details. Tap on that, and you'll be brought to the HomePod setting page. From here, you can set settings like listening history on HomePod, touch and hold for Siri, accessibility, location services, or disable Hey Siri to disable the HomePod's microphones. For this next tip, I actually singled it out from the specific settings because I find it so useful. This is the sound when using Siri setting. What this setting does is play a sound when you are using the Hey Siri command. This is a helpful little tip because it lets the user know if Siri heard the command or not by playing a little sound. It's just a nice little tip to get that nice little bong sound playing, and you get a nice little confirmation that Hey Siri has been activated. Okay, and for the last and final tip, here is something that took me a long time to find. When initially setting up the HomePod, there is a screen that asks you if you want to enable personal requests on the HomePod. If you want to disable it, or during setup you did not enable this and now you want to enable it, you may think you need to go to the settings page like I showed you in the previous tips. However, this setting for personal requests is nowhere to be found in the HomePod settings page. Here is what you need to do. Go to the main page of the Home app. Look on the top left and you will see a small circle icon for location services. Tap on that icon and you'll get to another settings page. Go to the people area, tap the person who wants personal requests, and on the bottom of this page you will find these settings for personal requests on HomePod. From here you can toggle it on or off, and this will enable HomePod to get access to your notes, reminders, and other personal information. This was actually deeply hidden under the settings menu, so hopefully it helps a few of you out who need it. I know this particular setting was driving me crazy when I was looking for it. Okay, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you, you're awesome. Go ahead and leave a like if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel to see more, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.